G'day friends, good morning, it's Nigel Woolley, great to join with you today, do another Shed Gospel live video, and I've had a few late nights, and some interesting late nights actually, and the reason for me having even late nights to begin with is my researching, and I found in the Hansard, which is the official transcript of the parliamentary debates and sessions of Parliament, found in New South Wales and also Victoria. So I've gone through it and I've highlighted these sections, but where they replaced their constitutions that brought the state into the federation. That is a fundamental change. It's a fundamental replacement of the lawful document that the Parliament needs to prove that it is part of the federation. And what this implication is that the will of the people was enumerated through the Commonwealth Constitution and it was enacted by Queen Victoria. And in the Commonwealth Constitution, there's section 106, which says that the states' constitutions would be saved at federation. And as at the establishment of the Commonwealth, the states' constitutions would be saved, the ones in force at that time. So that's the 1855 ones, around about the 1800, the later 1800s, even in the case of other states. But those constitutions were the only lawful ones to take the states into the federation. And if the states have replaced those by enacting them themselves, basically copying that imperial given document and creating their own one in the same manner and form as that original imperial issued one, which came from Queen Victoria, they've copied and replaced it, but they've also added changes. And when did it involve you? When did it involve the people of the Commonwealth? It didn't. And in fact, when you go back through the Parliament Hansard, you'll find that the members that were in opposition to these things at the time, these members had a problem with what was going on at the speed in which it was happening. It was being rushed through in a matter of weeks or days. Such a significant change to a state, to its foundations, is so crucial. And it's so paramount that they had spent the time to stop and consider what they were doing. But it's highly irresponsible to replace the Constitution. Imagine if they did that in America. Imagine the outrage of the people if the federal government in America had replaced the Constitution on the people without telling them. Imagine the outrage of that. Can you imagine? It'd be like civil war, and lawfully so. That's a crime of the highest degree. It's a huge crime. Victoria has done this in 1975. And in what I was reading in the Hansard last night, I was up to about 2:30 reading this because it's so important to find this stuff. What I found was that against the advice of the members, they were rushing this through, and both houses effectively supported owning their own constitution because they were worried that the British or the UK Parliament might somehow cancel their constitution that they were given, because it had happened once or twice when they were doing some statutory law reform in the UK, and they'd sort of struck off some laws that were underpinning other laws in Victoria. And so on that basis, and there was a sudden rush. They'd prepared this document for months and months and months, or maybe over a year. It says that it's potentially over a year. Like the members were sort of reading through the proposed bill and realised that there was issues in the bill that were being debated a year ago that were resolved a year ago. So, they'd spent all this time preparing this document, the brand new constitution for Victoria. And these members were being asked to pass it within a matter of like a week. Something is wrong with that. Seriously wrong. And in 75, there was a lot of weird things that happened. Around 73, 75, in the UK when they signed the UK Parliament, I think they signed the UK into the EU in 1972, I think it was. And so that would have had an effect to Australia through the law foundations in our country, a fundamental effect. And I don't know whether they were trying to get away from something that was going on in the UK, because it actually says, and it doesn't say what the issue exactly was, but some of the members were privy to something that was going on in England. And it's in the Hansard there, that they were aware of it. And they said, on the basis that potentially Victoria doesn't have control of its own constitution, which was the original 1855 one, that because they don't have ownership of it, that if anything changed with England, it would it would basically rip the foundations out from under Victoria. And so that was their premise in replacing their constitution, which was their own enactment. So essentially they have assumed the powers to pass their own constitution. And they'd said that the UK Parliament was actually wanting them to create their own constitution. But the problem with this is, and even it was reserved for the Queen's pleasure, this constitution was, I believe it was signed off by the Queen Elizabeth II. But what's going on is that according to our Commonwealth Constitution, Section 106, it says that the state's constitutions as at the establishment of the Commonwealth shall continue. So that's the key phrase there, as at the establishment of the Commonwealth. It is the 1855 one with all of its amendments. You know, it's okay to make alterations of that 1855 constitution. You know, they were allowed to do so. And they'd done it, I guess, lawfully up until 1975. They'd done it the right way. But when they'd replaced the Constitution itself into the 1975 Constitution, effectively they had, you know, like reenacted the same law, but under their own authority. And they got the Queen to sign off on it. But what this has done, without engaging the Victorian people, it has effectively broken the federation in Victoria. We have an indissoluble federal Commonwealth. That's what our Constitution says, and our Commonwealth Constitution is the highest law in Australia. But by a state creating its own constitution on its own basis, even if it's a direct copy of the UK given one, what it's done is shifted the power base from the UK being under it to themselves being under it. It's a fundamental change. So that means that essentially they've even lost the original grant to the land. Because under, when, was it Governor Arthur Phillip, when Australia was being settled, the 1855 Constitution, if it's anything like the New South Wales one, will give parameters on where the boundaries of the state are. And that's a key thing in these constitutions, giving it boundaries of essentially talking about the territory that the Constitution applies to. But even if they've basically copied that same text that says that the boundary that Victoria is and that which the Constitution applies to, if that has been replaced in the sense of the source of authority to say so and claim that land, if that has been replaced by themselves enacting that same Constitution but under their own banner, it's a shifting of one foundation to another. And it hasn't involved the people of the Commonwealth. So therefore, they've broken Section 106 of the Commonwealth Constitution. And you will find several High Court decisions, which I've got, that show clearly there was one called New South Wales versus the Commonwealth 1975. And it shows that those constitutions in force at that time at the Federation are those constitutions that the Commonwealth Constitution has brought in at Federation. They've brought those state ones in. So New South Wales had an 1855 one. Victoria had an 1855 one. I think South Australia had an 1856 one. You know, but what's happened is that they have swapped these constitutions by enacting them. These parliaments have enacted them themselves and in effect have claimed themselves as their own source of authority to pass their own constitution. In a sense, they're saying that they're a supreme power or a sovereign power to be able to create and replace their own constitution without the granting of authority by the people that it applies to. This is a fundamental thing. And in everyone's frustration at what Daniel Andrews did last night, and everyone that's angry about this conversion practices bill that was rushed through the parliament again. I mean, rushing things through parliament is nothing new. And silencing debate on things is nothing new. And members voting sort of like in packs, this stuff is nothing new. You'll see they did that to the Victorian Constitution. And because they did that to their constitution, they can't have the same powers of making laws that apply to the people of the Commonwealth. Because their only grant to having the power to pass laws for the benefit of the people of the Commonwealth that live in Victoria is the fact that their constitution is bound in to the Commonwealth Constitution. And because they've replaced that, they've also lost the lawful right to make laws for the people of the Commonwealth that reside in Victoria. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because that fundamental, what you would even call a social contract between you and them through the Federation and through our Commonwealth Constitution, the fundamental social contract between you and them, you and the police in Victoria, you and the Parliament, you and the courts, it's all been broken by replacing the Constitution. It's so fundamental. And what the only lawful recourse from here would be is for the people of the Commonwealth to show this evidence to their local MPs, show them that there's been a breach of trust, show them that there's a fundamental issue here where their laws are not able to be lawful. They cannot even be lawfully applied to the people of the Commonwealth. I mean, it's not whether you don't like the things that they're doing. I mean, I don't like what they're doing, but there's a thing where their laws cannot be lawfully applied to you while ever they've broken the Commonwealth Constitution. I mean, no matter whether it's even a good law, it can't apply to you if you live in Victoria. And so if you're one of the people of the Commonwealth, I mean, I was born in Victoria myself, and I've got a copy of my Victorian birth certificate, and on the bottom of it, when it's got a little sign off showing that this is a true copy of a record kept in the state of Victoria, in the Commonwealth of Australia. So on my birth certificate, it shows that I'm in the Commonwealth of Australia. My Victorian birth certificate shows that I'm in the Commonwealth of Australia. But therein is the fundamental problem, because if I'm one of the people of the Commonwealth that was born in Victoria, right, my birth certificate has tied me to the Commonwealth, okay? That's interesting in and of itself. But when Victoria has broken the Commonwealth Constitution, I have evidence of a crime. My birth certificate is proof of a crime. It will set, I'm seeing this is going to set a lot of people free, but it's a fundamental earthquake to law foundations in Australia. There is no way that they can argue that their constitution applies to you when you have written evidence of it in the Hansard that they haven't even done due process. They couldn't even stand up in a court of law and say that their constitution applies to you. They've written themselves out of it, of the relationship with you. They've cut the relationship off from their end. They've done a huge crime of treason. Terrible. Victoria's not alone in what they've done. New South Wales has done this in 1902. On 18th of August 1902, they passed the the New South Wales Constitution 1902. So, I mean, they were only about a year and a half, or not even that, maybe a year and a few months into the Federation, when our idiot Premier, Sir John C. at that time, rushed through it's called a consolidating bill for the Constitution, our New South Wales Constitution, which is what they did in Victoria in 75, but New South Wales did it in 1902, where they basically said, okay, here's our original Constitution plus all of the amendments and plus the amendments that are done from the Commonwealth Constitution at Federation. So we'll bind all of that into a new document so you can easily see the Constitution and all of the things that apply to it. That's called a consolidating bill. But what New South Wales did was essentially what Victoria did. They enacted it themselves. And so therefore in New South Wales, no law would be lawfully applicable that they've created since 18th of August 1902. It cannot be applied to you if you're a living, breathing man or woman in the Commonwealth. And so therefore the only laws I see that are lawfully applied to us if we reside in these states is Commonwealth law and the Commonwealth Constitution. So any laws that have been passed by the federal, would apply to you. I mean, road rules and all this stuff, road rules are state laws. Police acts are state laws. Supreme courts, stuff like that, state Supreme Courts and local courts and state crimes acts are state laws. So here's a fundamental problem with what they've done as well, is that by breaking the social contract between the state and the people who reside in the state through breaking Section 106 of the Commonwealth Constitution, it invalidates their ability to make laws from there on. And it also invalidates the police's social contract with the people, well, the state's social contract with the people, but the police on that, which is normally a good thing. But what they've done is break the link between you and the policeman. They've broken the link between you and the judge. So here's the problem, is that criminals that are, should be charged for what they're doing in the states, that have, been arrested for good reason. If you know this technicality, that the judge and the policeman has no actual lawful right to go and arrest these criminals. And it's a real lawlessness. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you break a social contract between the people and the law-making body that is making laws for them and the law-enforcing body, if you break the social contract between them, there's actually no lawful... I don't see a lawful way that they can apply their charges to the people that they assume it applies to, And I think if this news got out, it would be very bad, because the criminals would realise that they have a lawful way out of not being held to account for what they're doing. And, I don't like lawlessness. The root of the problem is lawlessness. Unlawfulness, but lawlessness, but being done by politicians and policemen that are posing as policemen. I mean, these are crimes. But just to finish this video here, but to sum up what Daniel Andrews passed last night with his conversion practices bill, is not going to be able to be lawfully applied to the people of the Commonwealth that live in Victoria. Doesn't matter whether they love it. If there's people that are cheering this bill on, there's no way it's going to actually be applicable to the people of the Commonwealth that live in Victoria, which is everyone. And through what they did back in 75, they broke the social contract. So if like Romania can't make a law that applies to me because there's no social contract between me and Romania. You know, America can't pass a law that applies to me because I'm not in a social contract with them. But if Victoria doesn't have a social contract with the people that live there through the Commonwealth Constitution, then unfortunately their own laws can't even be applicable to the people that live there. Same thing in New South Wales. It can't be applicable to the people that live in New South Wales because New South Wales has enacted their own constitution. Queensland's enacted their own constitution. They did it twice. They passed their first version of their own constitution was in 2001, I think it was. And they even did it again. There's another release of their constitution, which is in 2010, where you're given a referendum. Was the people of the Commonwealth that live in Queensland given a referendum when they replaced their constitution? I don't think so. And they're bound by the Commonwealth Constitution, Section 106. You know? So, Section 106 is the link between it's the deal. You know, if they've broken the deal, then the deal is off. It's a breach of contract. I mean, if you want to talk contract law, it's a breach of contract where one party has changed the terms and conditions of the deal and has not notified you and has gone on as though you didn't notice. That is a crime. That is called a breach of contract. You know, it's rewriting the foundations of the relationship between you two. And what's happened when they replaced their state constitutions, they've done that because of the binding clause that is in Section 106 of our Commonwealth Constitution. And so therefore, Section 107 of the Commonwealth Constitution, which gives the states powers to make laws, cannot apply. So they've actually cut their own lawful basis out from themselves. They've disqualified themselves. It's even in a logical order. If you read the Commonwealth Constitution, it's in logical order. First it goes, state constitutions must be in place and maintained properly and altered only, it's only altered, not replaced, altered in accordance with the state. That's okay. Make some small changes, but do it the lawful way. You know, the state constitutions are first in Section 106, but then it goes on to Section 107 and it says that the powers of the Parliament shall continue of each state. So they were granting the conditional thing that the state parliaments would have power to make laws. But it's only after their constitutions are in place and maintained properly. But if the state has replaced its own constitution, they've, by natural order and natural progression and just sheer logic, they have disqualified themselves from having the power to make laws too. So, you know, it's just fundamental, but you'd probably do well to have a bit of a research into what I'm saying, but I'll put as much as I can on Shed Gospel there and you can read it for your own self. I'll try and put factual information where you can check it out for yourself. And like I've just done before with the previous post this morning, that it's just a screenshot of an extract out of their Hansard, and you'll see, I mean, these guys are abusing parliamentary process. And you can see they're rushing things through in a matter of days. So you can use it as evidence that they're not even doing the right thing by the people that live in Victoria. But if they've done that, I mean, that's one thing to do it to some law that they've created themselves. That's sort of like just bad anyway. But when they've done it to the constitution of the state and have been negligent and irresponsible, you have every lawful right to go back and say, hang on a minute, you guys broke the deal. You look at what you've done. Your laws can't apply to me. You show me. You have the obligation to prove to me that your laws apply to me, and you cannot, because they won't. They can't. So I hope you can take some courage. If you don't like what they're doing, take some lawful recourse and show them the facts of what they've done and how they've broken the contract between you and them. And God will help you, because we've got to save this country. The governor's actually got to disband the parliament and reset it properly. That's the way forwards. So, God bless you, friends. I'll catch up with you later. Bye-bye.